welcome to this edition of the Trader Talk TV. Today we're talking about the future of the independent DSP and the open web. There's been a lot of news this week, only last night we heard about Xandr closing their DSP, and that has a huge impact on the space. And today we've got Jochen from Adform in the office. Jochen, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. We're going to break it down. We're going to talk about privacy. We're going to talk about the open web. We're going to talk about Agentic AI. Jochen's kindly come in here today. Interesting, we were talking this before we even did this Trader Talk. We're talking about the pivot because there was so much news this week. Jochen, just give people an overview of what you do at Adform again and what Adform is as well.
Yeah, of course, happy to. So Adform is a programmatic advertising platform. So we are primarily focusing on DSP business. But we are one of the biggest ad servers in the world with, of course, the needed accreditations and everything. And we are providing all the modules and services around audience management, consent management, etc., PP, dynamic creative optimization for an end-to-end management of your campaign lifecycle.
Brilliant, brilliant. As I said, huge news this week. Xandr announced they're closing their DSP, which was formerly the AppNexus DSP. Big news because it was used by a lot of people back in the day and still has a significant market share. And we've had Jeff Green on a recent earnings call talking about how Google was going to abandon the open web and just focus on YouTube and own and operated inventory. And I want to talk today about this opportunity because people seem to be going very negative on the open web, and we'll talk about that. But let's talk about this privacy piece first, right? One of the things that Microsoft said in their PR spin, if you will, was they're doing this because of privacy concerns. But that seems to be a misnomer. There seems to be sort of like some error in their thinking. Well, let's talk about that privacy part, because I want to talk about that from an independent DSP point of view, which Adform really is one of the leading players now. I mean, there's only two left at this stage if Google is herself.
At least in Europe, right? At least in Europe, there's not that much left.
But let's talk about the privacy piece first, Jochen, and then we can talk about our collective view of the open web.
Yeah, of course, let's do that. So at the end, if it's good for privacy or not, it matters, of course, anyway on the contractual setups, because anything can be run compliantly, but at the end, if you look at it, so if you have your publisher, I need to really concentrate that people can read it, and then you have, let's just skip the publisher ad server, then you have your SSP, and then you have your, let's just say, your DSPs, and one of those DSPs, color switch, nice, got the right color.
Nicely done.
One is Xandr. And your SSP is also Xandr. And then you are actually transacting this way, all the way to the ad server, respectively, then at the end, the advertiser. Advertiser. What is the benefit of shutting down your Xandr DSP? The only thing that can happen is that you take this one out and you're adding Trade Desk, or you're adding Adform, or yet another player into the mix. So you're actually adding a third-party DSP, removing your own DSP, because this is let's call it on-platform privacy. So there's one vendor that needs consent. Here, there are two vendors. So out of the box, I don't really see, if you are an end-to-end platform, which is bridging the entire supply chain in a privacy-compliant matter, which I'm 100% sure Xandr is doing today, if you take it out, it's at least not per se good for privacy.
Yeah, but I don't know, they kind of swept that aside, but that's a good point to make around, the end-to-end piece they had here was actually more privacy compliant than sort of plugging in third-party DSPs, which they need for their yield on their SSP.
Absolutely.
That's an interesting point. I want to talk now about the open web, right? So this has people talking around about the future of the open web. Everybody seems to go negative on it, but there also seems to be this consensus among talking heads in the industry and industry leaders that the open web effectively is browser-based display. I would be violently against that outlook. But let's talk about what you see as the open web and what Adforms, because you see it better than anybody else. And we were talking about this opportunity before we went on to do this whiteboard session, that you reckon the open web opportunity is about $100 billion or 100 billion euros market size in Europe alone.
So, and I think the interesting piece is here also to look at how that develops, because if you take a look at let's take the independent DSP, right?
Yeah.
What is it activating in the minds of many people maybe? And that is then browser-based display.
Yeah.
So the start of the discussions that we had back in the days when I was here first was also around the privacy sandbox. The privacy sandbox only solved for that, but it's of course already quite visible that there is the huge in-app space, right?
Which is absolutely huge.
And it has been there for a long time.
Yeah.
It's often transactioned a bit differently because there's cost per installs and there's more performance-based, outcome-based mechanisms. So transparent business is often going here, but it's all connected. But when we are talking with our strategists, also with external consultants, we are more and more focusing not just on the display piece, of course, same protocol, same browser, but an increasing part of video, more and more and more every year. Of course, also video as a main format going into CTV. Then we have audio rising quite massively, and we have digital out of home really coming out of the box, not even talking about retail media for trade marketing budgets as a new digital channel,
exactly,
but also for regular campaigns step by step. And if you take a look at this compared to this, today, just back of a napkin, I would say maybe this is still 2/3 or 70%, and that is maybe a third. But this is changing over time. So this is actually growing, becoming more interesting. And if you take a look at that, and that's why when we talk to also our investors, are really excited about it, actually about the space, because this one is rising.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, in our own forecast, this one is also still rising.
Yeah.
In Europe, in the US, it's not. So very clearly, more video, more CTV, pushing in that direction. But Europe is not dead on display, but the growth massively comes from video and these channels. Now, what is the interesting part about that? When you look at the walled gardens, Microsoft, Google, Meta, and so on and so forth, they're not really playing here.
No.
Because who are the big CTV players? That's the big streaming platform.
You could argue that Xandr is going to be an attempt by Microsoft to kind of focus on own and operated, like almost build their own PMax type model, right? PMax and Advantage Plus is Meta's and whatever, I don't know what Amazon's called. But effectively, they're just basically buying their own stuff.
That could very well be, yes.
But that means they're ignoring a big chunk of the media landscape, right? More and more of our time, specifically around here, is on streaming and CTV channels. You're right about audio. I mean, I don't think I've listened to radio. It's all podcasts. It's like that's a go-to, Spotify or whatever platform you're using. Out of home, despite the fact it seems to be sort of like seen as a sort of like antiquated industry, it's worth about 40 billion, right? We still have to see stuff outside. Like it's a brilliant channel. It actually does work as well. Retail media, to your point, right? It's massive, right? Every single retailer, right? Every single commerce site is now launching an ad business. Look at Uber. Uber went from 0 to now 1.5 billion, right? It's the profit margin for their business. So this is incredible opportunity in open web, and it's something like you guys have been kind of really hammering. And given the news yesterday of another walled garden just saying enough's enough, goodbye, they're just basically dumping a huge opportunity.
They're not looking at, let's say in 5 years, at least 50% of the market.
Right.
They're basically saying no to that. And the interesting thing for me is also, why the independent DSP? Because these guys already now or in the future could consider building their own SSP, and they still connect to the demand. They could go fully walled like Microsoft, like Google at some point. On digital out of home, you have the same. There are specialist SSPs operating that, right? Here you also have specialists. Will they all go direct to the advertiser? Will they all go direct to the agency? Does the agency want to operate the 4 walled gardens with a specific system, then the 5 biggest CTV publishers, then a couple of digital out of home players that all have their own buyer interface? I don't believe that. However agentic and generative the solutions are, it needs an aggregation layer. And this is for us, the proof point also on the growth story in the market, addressable market size for any DSP, and from a user experience side, that the fragmentation is not stopping, but it's actually just starting, even though the big walled gardens might take out their own operating.
This is quality. Let's be honest, PMax is dog shit. Advantage Plus is dog shit. I suspect, Microsoft inventory is probably a lot better than Meta's. Meta's is just UGC. Google's is basically just garbage in many ways. Like, I mean, YouTube apart will have some quality, but this is where advertisers will want to be. And it just boggles. I kind of like despair when I hear, it's display, and browser and agentic will take away from referral traffic. Fine. but people will find a way, are basically consuming more and more different media channels, right? Like, you know, it's streaming TV, right? It's
and again,
audio.
more independent challenge. I think that is the beauty of it, that it's not owned by the big platforms.
Which is good.
Yet, let's hope it stays that way.
Well, I just think with anti-competitive rules, I think we're in for a more vibrant ecosystem. So you see then this independent play, like for Adform, obviously, there's lots of news about Adform potentially, you know, selling the company. You can't comment on it, obviously, but that's an opportunity for you to grow your business. This growth of sort of the independent footprint, 100 billion addressable markets.
So this is a super interesting opportunity, and it also brings in the topic that you stated before, because where can generative AI play a role?
Yeah.
Right. So we can play a big role in activating all of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it means media fragmentation, channel fragmentation. No one can really solve that in a way with just regular interfaces, where you have full control, all bells and whistles. Sometimes you want to be fast. Sometimes you want a prediction on where should I run that channel-wise, which audience should I target, what's the right context. And there you might have a couple of agents that do that, but sometimes you also say, hey, I have my default way of managing my mid-tier clients as an agency. Then you create templates. Then you want to check that out and do that. Of course you can discuss if you want to put yet another framework on top of it, but I always have the example, like, do you really want to say, if there's a good template that you can just say, apply, hey, Adform, I want to start my campaign on the 1st of May, it should stop on the, and you type, or you talk and you talk, or you just have your spring campaign template for your advertisers. Yeah. So both has a raison d'etre, both can do something, but it's about configurable simplicity. Right. So you need that level for people who want a Performance Max style user interface, maybe an SME or a non-sophisticated buyer, but a sophisticated buyer always wants more.
Exactly. If you're buying across multi-channel, right? Yeah. I mean, it's very easy for a PMax advertiser because it's Google search effectively, right? So you put in your campaign, it's very much text-based. You know, you don't have deals, you don't have audiences. No, and there's no media deals, like regardless of the economics of our industry is very important, right? There could be trading deals across 50, 60 different vendors or supply partners that has to be built into your system. You talked about before about reporting, right? Are you going to let an agentic AI piece build your pivot table when it's hallucinating 2-3% of the time? You remember, a lot of these LLMs are trained in synthetic data. It's not good sort of fuel to be put into these things. So they're going to make mistakes. But as you pointed out, agentic seems to be more of a performance piece. And there is, it's a good question for you, but there seems to be this sort of growing thesis that there's a dual track in adtech, right? There's the legacy adtech and there's like AI adtech, which I think is utter bullshit, to be honest with you. Because it sort of discounts the fact that you as a company can't build AI pieces when the technology is so open.
I think the story is a bit more complicated at the end, but we're working in marketing, right? So also no surprise. So if we just take a look at Adform, and I bet you money that every DSP is the same. The classic Adform, the one that existed already 2019, is built on top of an AI stack, right? And that is around 20 AI services. Transactional, always on, more than 40,000 being models deployed a couple of times a day. Then on top, we have what we call Adform Flow, which is our user experience. Yeah. Where will you now use something like an agentic system? You will, of course, use it, and we will as well. And we'll launch something in that direction already in the next months. So you will add a new UI layer, and that is an agentic AI layer. Yeah. And some users will go this way. This is a bad color. I'll go red now. No, apology for that.
That's all right.
So we go red.
Agentic AI in real time.
Agentic AI in real time, exactly. But instead of creating new reports with the help of an agent, you connect the agent to your classic reporting layer. Yeah. And it creates the report using the data mechanics from the past, but it produces it into a conversational interface and makes it also actionable that you can also change things in the agentic interface. So you don't go, let's say, what rows do you want to have? What columns do you want to have? What are your pivot drill downs? But you describe that. And I think that's a really cool interface because maybe 5% of people can actually build a pivot table, but describing a pivot table, many can do that. And I think that's a bit the same. There will be user-facing GenAI components, which are more translation-oriented. Find the right audience, find the right context, yada, yada, yada. But if you are about to run a CPA optimization, you will not run a CPA optimization with generative AI. You will just set it up using the CPA optimizer in the background because it just needs to react in 20 milliseconds, needs to be updated multiple times a day and listen to billions of data signals plus millions from your own properties. So this is a mix and match approach where a new type of conversation and user interface creates the value, but the backends will be largely the same, apart from the fact that you need, and that's something that we can then draw, it gets full the whiteboard, that you need, of course, your agentic framework that then does all the connections and layerings. But the so-called legacy AI will stay. And when your forecasting system works as it should, you don't need a new forecast, you just need a new conversation to converse.
In many ways, it's a way to navigate the complexity of a DSP, right? So from optimization to campaign building, campaign planning, to reporting. So I can imagine a planner buyer wanted to spit out a specific report around something.
Absolutely.
It was basically instructed almost a command line thing because it's hilarious. It's just, I mean, we've been using sort of Unix and Linux for years and command lines, and so there's not that much difference. Just do me such a report and it can spit out a specific.
You can always
report.
use the nerd way, or you can use the more UI-based.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
I do think that there is a lot of unnecessary froth around this. I think it's, as a technology, it's definitely transformational. But,
Absolutely.
But it underpins existing businesses. To say that this will completely wipe away how we do business is
of course
complete
not.
nonsense.
Take a look how other industries are doing that. If you take a look to ERP systems, if you take a look to sales systems, taking the two most prominent examples, Salesforce and SAP.
Yeah.
They're building exactly these types of layer. They're positioning it as a new user interface.
Right.
SAP does that with Joule. Salesforce does it with Einstein and all the builds on top, but this is how they go. They will not change the way how do they do ERP forecasts, but they will change the way how you access it and how you can take action upon it.
Yeah.
So it's making you more efficient.
Yeah, the data's actionable in real time.
Exactly.
Right.
And it gives you access. I just give you the most simple agentic feature. If you want to go to a campaign, want to set up a certain tracking point somewhere, you have to click 5 times in the system, maybe you have a shortcut. If you have an agentic layer, you can say, hey, I'm interested in that campaign for advertiser X. Haven't looked at it in a while, I need a new tracking point there. Can you take me to the tracking point definition? It just moves you to the right part in the system. That's just navigational UX, but it's just so much more efficient using an agent that knows how to reset context and take you to where the action is. And that is, I think, for people that don't know the system, really valuable.
Do you think that we get to a point where agentic then optimizes the campaign or suggests some back to a specific user that you're not hitting your KPIs? You should do this. You should do that. Like, is there a scenario?
I think again, bundling wise, yes. In reality, most of the recommendations are machine learning recommendations, right? If you go on Adform, we say, hey, you can improve your CTR by deselecting these 20 domains,
right?
Which right now get a certain amount of spend just because of the settings.
Yeah.
This is a machine learning based optimization, regular AI that is already in the system, exposing that into this concierge agent that says, hello, welcome to Adform, great you logged in today. I found a couple of new optimizations today. Is a great UX, but it's picking up the old recommendation that is in the optimizer module today.
Yeah.
So this is how to make the system more speaking, more like a concierge in a hotel, instead of going down and asking, hey, I heard you have an ironing board somewhere in the basement. Can you tell me where I can find that? Or you just have to go down 3 stairs and then you'll get it, right? Instead, it brings it right into your face. And I think that's actually transformative, but it doesn't mean that you don't need the backend. I think that's the key thing. You still need the backend, and then you add that on top.
Okay, this is brilliant because it's actually kind of like rips apart Microsoft's PR in terms of privacy. The open web is dead, and agentic is going to change the whole space.
Well, unless they just do own and operate it, then they are still one platform.
I think they will.
No one else is buying on it, and then they can create that as a UX. That's cool.
To be fair, but it does suggest to me that another company is abandoning the open web, which is it seems a bit silly, but that's the way the trajectory is going, which means that the opportunity is big for independent ad tech.
So we are very, very happy to see that space. We are investing hugely into more planning so that you can simplify that. We will have a new digital out of
and no doubt there'll be more channels here as well. You can imagine like independent chatbots to be running ads, that will be another inventory source at some stage.
I think that's the thing which is hard to forecast, right?
Yeah.
How much risk is there also for the open web, which includes upside for players like us, search. So how much of your search do you still do with Google?
I think it's about 30-40% maybe. Yeah, John's waving or.
So I'm even lower.
Yeah.
Maybe that is experts trying to do that because I treat ChatGPT as a drunk friend, so he knows quite a lot, but I'm always cautious.
Yeah.
I'm always cautious.
Yeah. Don't take financial advice from your drunk friend. Never make life decisions when you're hungover as well. Maybe
that's true.
Anyway, yeah, that was great. Thank you very much. So we're taking away that the open web is alive and in good form.
Vibrant.
And vibrant. There's so much opportunity, and we'll leave it on that positive note because Microsoft, you can build your own sort of own and operated ad network. Good luck to you. Jochen, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
And that was Trader Talk TV. We'll see you next time.